Hi, I'm Anna, the Communications and Outreach Manager at Dyslexia Canada, and today we're here with Dale MacKay, who is a dyslexic Canadian chef. Dale, would you like to introduce yourself to our viewers?
I'm Dale MacKay. I am a chef, Canadian chef from Saskatchewan, Saskatoon. I have been lucky to kind of work all around the world, but I'm originally from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and I moved back here, I guess, about 8 years ago to open up restaurants and try to bring back kind of what I've learned around the world back to Saskatoon. And that's, yeah, I have 4 restaurants, soon to be 5 restaurants. I have 3 in Saskatoon and 2 in Regina. Ranging from Italian to Japanese and Korean and French and Italian.
Nice, perfect. And so can you tell us a bit more about yourself in terms of some of your career highlights so far?
Sure. I started cooking at a pretty young age, mostly out of kind of more, it ended up being out of circumstance. I left school at a really young age. I left school when I was 14, and then I moved to Vancouver, and I spent some time just kind of doing odd jobs and stuff. And then I eventually started dishwashing at a chain restaurant called Red Robin. And then from there, somebody got to work one day and I started cooking. And then I kind of just went from there and went from better restaurant to better restaurant and did my best to kind of learn. I couldn't go to culinary school because I didn't have enough education at the time to be able to actually even get into culinary school. So I just chose the path of trying to work in the best kitchens I possibly could, and eventually moved to London, England, and ended up working there for about 3 years under Gordon Ramsay. When I joined him, I guess it was 2000. And that's, you know, when he was kind of chef famous, but he wasn't, you know, world famous. He was mostly, he had one restaurant at the time. It was the #1 restaurant in the world. So I went there to join him. I didn't have a job or anything like that. I just showed up there and tried to get a job because I really didn't have any real good experience. I just kind of showed up hoping that they would give me a job or give me a chance, and they did. And then so spent 3 years there opening up restaurants and for him kind of in London. And then eventually I moved to Japan for him and opened up 2 restaurants there. And then in between that, I went home back to Vancouver for a while, and then I worked at some fishing resorts and some different things like that. Then I moved to New York for him again, and spent another 3 years with him there. All the while, by the way, I had to go back as my son Aiden was born in 2002, and so he lived with me in Japan, and then we lived in New York. And so at about age 3.5, I got him full time. And so it was just kind of the 2 of us kind of doing our thing and traveling the world. And I moved back to Vancouver for a short bit, and then back to New York, and then back to Vancouver with a chef named Danielle Ballud. And then since then, I've been kind of opening up my own restaurants, and I moved back to Saskatchewan, I guess, about 8 years ago. And now I have almost 5 restaurants here with my business partner, and my son is now 19, turning 20 in March. And so that was the short, condensed kind of hopefully version.
Wow, well, you've certainly done lots of traveling, and you definitely have a lot of experience now.
Yeah, it's been good. I got lucky to get in with some really good chefs and really good mentors, and not just on the food side of things, but on the business side of things. And yeah, and now I guess I would probably say I'm more of an entrepreneur than I am necessarily a chef on the sense of my day to day. But I'm still wearing an apron. I still jump in the kitchen and do stuff and work on dishes and because that's obviously what I love the most. But the business side of things is extremely important.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you were the first ever winner of Canadian Top Chef. Yeah. How did that feel?
It was good. I was such a different person back then. You know, I guess it was 11 years ago now, which seems like it was 20 years ago, but I was so intense. I'm a pretty intense person generally, or at least people find me more intense more than I find myself, I think. But I was so focused on becoming one of the best chefs in the world and being, you know, at the very, very, very top of the game, which, you know, I always was in some of the best restaurants in the world with some of the best chefs in the world. So once I went out on my own, you know, I definitely had more to prove. And then coming back to Canada, I even had, again, more to prove to show, you know, Canada and show everyone what I had learned and what I'd done. So applying and going and doing that was kind of like almost like a release for me. It was a big, you know, after that I could calm down a bit and stuff. But I went in so focused and competitive. I'm a very, very competitive person. So even on the show, I was kind of dubbed the villain almost, because I was, I was so openly competitive. Like I would tell the camera, I would tell the other competitors that I was going to win openly. I'd say like, I'm going to win this whole thing openly all the time. The first episode, I told everyone that. So it was partly, I think I came out of such an aggressive background from kitchens, from Gordon Ramsay's and all these, you know, highly competitive kitchens, that it's part psychological, you know. So going and doing that was really, really nice. Getting to show and prove everybody, and showing my son was probably the big thing, and getting to see, you know, growing up a single parent and having, you know, nannies and obviously and that kind of stuff, and needing that support, because I obviously, you know, was quite focused on my career as well as him. It was a good way to show him what all those hours were for and why, so he could actually see me physically on TV and see me kind of being at the top of the game. So long-winded answer is that it was fantastic, and it was definitely something, you know, obviously I'll never forget, and has changed the course of my career and my life for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And that's really nice that your son was, you know, or is, I guess, still such a motivation for you.
Yeah, he's,
yeah.
I know it's lame to say as a parent, but he really is, especially now that he's older. He really is kind of my best friend, and we spend so much time together, and he's I consult with him on, you know, everything that I do and stuff like that. And one thing about him I really like, I like everything about him, but from such a young age, and even still to this day, you know, even I can remember even him being 5 and he being very open about the fact that he's never going to be in the restaurant industry and that he doesn't want to be a chef. And I always like that, because it just shows he had his own thing, his own personality, and all that kind of stuff. You know, most little boys or little girls or whoever want to be, you know, whatever the parent is, or want to kind of say that they do, at least kind of he's made like that. He was always like, no, I'm good. Yeah.
At least he was honest.
Yeah.
And then, so you're like a judge and a personality on a couple of TV shows at the moment. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, you know, it's nice. Also, you know, doing Top Chef kind of allowed me to kind of get on TV, and not everybody likes that. Not every chef is necessarily good at it either. Not every, you know, whether you're a chef or not, you know, TV's not for everyone. And I really enjoy that kind of atmosphere and enjoy doing it. And it's something, not just because you get to be on TV, but I actually enjoy the process and it's quite fun. So I've been lucky to get, you know, casted on some other shows. I've done some in the States. I've done a show in Korea. I've done multiple kind of shows here. And I'm lucky to be a resident on 2 shows here called Wall of Chefs and Fire Masters. Fire Masters is a lot of fun because I get to be a competitor and a judge. So I judge first, and then not every episode, but some of the episodes I'm on, I essentially go against the final cook that's in out of the 3, which is fun because it keeps you sharp, and you know, you get to, you know, judge them and then step down and hopefully try to beat them. And it keeps, yeah, it just keeps you sharp, and judging is, it's fun, especially after doing so much competitions, because you really understand what they're going through, and at the same time you get to give them some really good judgment of in the sense of what they could do better, or why they should have done something differently, because you could put yourself in those situations. Competing in food is very, very difficult, and it relies on very, very quick thinking, and very, very, once you make a decision, you have to go with it. It's not, you can't be wishy-washy on stuff, because you're on such tight time restraints. So that's what I really enjoy about competition, is that I feel like I can be creative quickly, and if you can't do that, then you're going to fall short. But I love doing TV, I love judging, and I think it's a good way to keep you know, keep people learning and stuff too.
Yeah, and that's really cool. You have the opportunity to do both still as well. And
yeah,
you know, most people that compete in shows end up being judges down the line, but don't.
Yeah, if you do well, usually get asked. But yeah.
That's true, yeah. Being the winner definitely helps.
Yeah.
So if we can talk a bit about your dyslexia. So when were you first diagnosed?
I think it was, I say grade 1, but the thing is about that is I did grade 1 twice. And so I'm pretty sure it was the second year that I did grade 1, and that's when it kind of I would say really came to light, or it was diagnosed, and systems were put in place in the sense of like, okay, this is what we're dealing with, and this is how it's going to be, kind of thing. So I knew before that even that there was something that was a little bit different, that it wasn't, other kids were definitely getting on with things a lot easier than I was, even though that I would, even back then, consider myself would have been one of the more clever people around. But it was quite apparent to me and to the teachers and everything else that there was something else that needed to be kind of looked at for sure.
And do you think being diagnosed relatively early made a big difference to your time at school?
I think it was probably more important for, at least for me, for home, that my mom knew, and that my mom had some answers or had some avenues or had some information that my mom's like, I'm a copy of her. She's very focused, and when there's an issue or a problem, she's going to find out, she's going to go for it, and she's going to try to do her best to kind of remedy it. So she did everything she could. She immediately got hooked on phonics. I don't know if you know that program, but that came out, I think, pretty much right when I was diagnosed. It was early on. So we, immediately started doing hooked on phonics pretty much at home. She got me an outside of tutoring as well. I was put in resource at school. Generally resource, they put it in there instead of doing French or doing something extracurricular kind of thing, things like that. I'm 40, soon to be 42. And so, when I was in, I guess I'm talking about 82, 84 right now. I wouldn't say the resource room was really set up to learn any differently than you were learning in the classes at the time. I think it was just a place for them to put you to kind of, I don't know, I guess to kind of work on things a little bit, but I wouldn't say that there was any real programs put in place at the time for that. It was more just, you're not going to be able to learn this thing, so we'll put you in resource for a while. Mm-hmm. But I think it definitely helped me knowing, mostly for my mom, I would say, to be able to, so she could help me.
Yeah. And was your mom like your main support system then, or do you have other people or other elements in your support system?
My mom was, and still to this day is my biggest support system. She always has been. My brothers were really good too. Luckily they haven't had to deal with learning disabilities or dyslexia or anything like that. I wouldn't say any of us are stellar students, but they did okay, and we're a very, very close family and brothers, and we come from a single family house as well. They were really supportive to me, and I was the youngest, and they did their very, so I almost they were good to me. They were really good to me, and they did their best to make sure that I didn't feel stupid, and I use that word bluntly because that's the way you feel, and that's when you're a young kid. And that's how I really did feel all the time when I went to school. I wouldn't say that you're made to feel that way in school, but I think when I went to school, you kind of did, there wasn't anything wrong with the program. There wasn't anything wrong with them. There was something wrong with you. And there was a reason why you were being, you just felt stupid going into school. And it's a sinking feeling from a young age. It definitely affects you.
Yeah. I mean, even now, many children will be able to, or young people will be able to relate to what you're saying, and will be going through that right now. So it's great that you had, not just your mum, but your older brothers looking out for you. So what did you find most challenging at school?
Comprehension, I think, was probably the biggest thing for me. Math wasn't really ever an issue. I was okay in that. For me, it was comprehension. Spelling and reading was obviously my biggest thing. Spelling to this day is it unfortunately, I can only speak for myself. It doesn't really get that much better when in some areas for me. Reading has got significantly better over the years, and because of practice and because of you kind of teach your brain how to read quicker and different things. I'm still a pretty slow reader, but spelling, it's now, I'm going to be 65 and I'm still going to forget how to spell things completely. Like literally 2 days ago, I was sitting there and I 100% could not even remember how to spell actually. Like it was not even in the cards. And I'm like, what the, and spell check even sometimes is like, what are you talking about, man? I have no idea what you're saying. And so but for me, at a younger age, it was comprehension. It was understanding what was going on. When you can't read and when you're supposed to be learning to read and write, and everyone else is kind of taking those marks up, and you still haven't learned the basics, and then you basically just feel like there's no way to catch up. And so that starts affecting your mood and your want to try to keep up and to dig in, because I look at being dyslexic as a young person as almost like a defending game. You're constantly defending. There's no offense. So you're constantly defending, and you're mostly defending. You're hiding everything you possibly can. You're hiding that you're not understanding things. You're hiding the fact that you're not getting it, because it's either that or you're constantly saying, I don't get it, I don't get it, I don't get it. And especially back then, yeah. So I looked at it as a constant hiding and defending game, which was tough.
Yeah. And were you able to have any outlets in school? Like, did you particularly enjoy, I don't know if you were able to have cooking in school, but, was there anything else you found enjoyable?
Sports, I was okay at, I used that for recess and stuff. But to be honest with you, it's always been my sense of humor. I've always, that's not a school subject, but that's how I coped with everything. And maybe even in a bad way. And sometimes, I would use it definitely in a sarcastic and even at times, and I've made amends with some people that I turned into a bit of a bully at times, not a physical bully, but a verbal bully, because it was a way for me to be able to get one up on people and keep them, essentially fend them off, because I could outsmart them in a clever verbal way. I might not be able to read from a book in the class, but I can definitely, call you out top to bottom. So I use that. And again, that definitely got me through periods of life. Not a healthy way, but I definitely use my personality, my sense of humor. And that not just on students, with teachers even too. Most of the time it didn't work with teachers. Some teachers really, really loved me because they knew my situation and they understood that I was, and other teachers put me in the photocopier room. I think it was grade 4. I spent probably 75% of my year in the photocopier room because my desk was in there. And the funny thing is that I turned it into almost like a business, whereas like all the teachers would come in to do their copies, and I'd be like, hey, how many copies do you want me to do? And so I'd take all their stuff. I'd make all their copies. I'd walk around the school dropping off copies and stuff like that, when I was really supposed to be doing whatever classwork. But I don't think my teacher cared, because at least I was busy and I was doing stuff. But see, that stuff came really easy, being able to understand of like how I can set this all up and how I can get your copies, and I'll get you and I'll drop this off later. So that came really easy, but the school stuff didn't.
Sounds like you've always been, had that inner entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So how do you feel? Like, do you feel you're still quite similar to how you were in school? Or like, obviously you would have, grown and developed a lot, but in terms of like personality, or even how your dyslexia affects you, are there much differences?
Yeah, I think once it took me quite a few years to get over that underlying feeling that you're stupid or that you're not, that took me quite a few years to get over. And but I always kind of, in my gut, I always knew, I come from a really hardworking family, and that was always drilled into me, that no matter what, if you work hard and if you focus on something, that you're going to be successful. And I was lucky that my mom put this weird false sense of like, you're going to be great, you're going to do great things into me. And so I always believed that. I just kind of believed in my heart that eventually, once I got out of school and once I got out in the world, that I would be able to do well. And for me, it was about finding tricks of being able to keep up with everyone else in my own way. And that a lot of it came down to organization, that I always had to be extremely organized and ready for things. And I guess the biggest lesson for me was head on. You've got to face things head on. And dyslexia, I think, for a lot of people, and for me, it makes you want to hide. It makes you want to go into the background and not head things, on, because when you have a learning disability or dyslexic, even if you try to meet certain things head on, you're not necessarily going to be successful. And even with support, you just have to at least get over that. It's just the reality, some people are born and they can't run fast, and some people are really smart. You're going to be born with certain attributes, and I just had to figure out the fact that these aren't ever really going to get to much better a level. I can still work at them, but everything else I need to go head on and organize as possible. Still to this day, I'm not OCD, but I say, people say OCD in the sense of the way I organize myself. I write constant lists. I check things off, you know what I mean? So I've had to find ways that I learn, and I know for a fact audio visual is how I learn. I can sit in a boardroom. I'm on a few different boards of companies and charities and different things like that. I can sit in a boardroom while everyone else is writing things down, and I can comprehend everything, and I can remember it 2 years later. And that's how I run my businesses for the most part. As I'm getting older, I'm getting more forgetful, and I have to put things on my phone and stuff like this. But I generally learn everything I've learned in business and in cooking and everything is by watching and by listening and being proactive and thinking things through. So that's just how I've had to learn, and that goes into school as well. That I just had to just choose your battles and just set yourself up the best you can and be mature about it, that which was the biggest thing.
Yeah, that's really great advice as well. And do you use any like apps or any like assistive tech or anything to help you day to day with your like organization and stuff?
I use voice text a lot. Again, when I write a lot of emails, spend hours on a day on my computer, because obviously I have numerous businesses and dealing with production staff or from TV shows, or I'm my own agent when it comes to doing endorsements and doing that kind of stuff. Because again, I like to be very personable with anyone I'm dealing with and stuff. And I think too, when people, I'm sure the first time they get an email from me, they're just like, holy shit, what's wrong with this guy? Maybe at times, depending on the time of day when I wrote it. But then once they get to know me, I think it doesn't really matter anymore, because they just, I try to be, again, personable. So you don't really have to have that formality of the grammar and all that stuff. But I every time I write an email, I have to use spell check. Every time I write an email that I know should be formal, my business partner and his partner, I just email them. I don't even have to say, can you check this? I just email them. They do a recopy, and they send it back. So I have the support, whether it be one of my chefs or my business partner or my mom even. I still to this day have to get people to pre-fruit things, and I voice text a lot.
So you're quite open about your dyslexia now, and you're not shy to ask for support. Have you always been like that?
Yeah, with loved ones, for sure. Like with people that, if I don't even care if you're, an 18-year-old cook and you just came in the kitchen, I'll ask you how to spell something. It doesn't bother me. That's now, when I was 25, no, but now I am, but you have to ask for help, and if you don't, you're just holding yourself back. And that's what I mean too with being, a constant defense. You can't go forward unless you're willing to take some of that help, because at the end of the day, this is just something you're gonna have to deal with, and you can't necessarily fix it. You can get better at things, but you can't fix it. And so it's either you ask for help or you stay the same.
Mm. And how do you feel that dyslexia has affected mental health? Can be your own or just in general, how do you feel?
I know for a fact it did affect me mentally as a child a lot. Laying in bed, going to bed at nighttime was very, very lonely, even though, and I don't lonely in the sense I didn't have loved ones around me. It's just, you're constantly, it's a constant struggle to not be down on yourself and not feel the dread of going to school, or the dread of having an assignment that is due, or the dread, so that's a pretty lonely place. And again, when I was in school, again, there wasn't many play. It wasn't set up for so you didn't feel stupid. You were just this stupid kid that went to resource, and so that was affected on me for a long time. And I would say it definitely pushed me to leave school, really quite at a young age, because it was like, what's the point? I hope kids don't feel that, and I hope schools don't necessarily it's not as much like that anymore. But when you're 6 or 7 or 8 years old, you have tons of crazy thoughts. But when you're that age, you don't really understand what's going on around you. You just know the teachers talk and that the parents talk. You know how many of those conversations that when you were young in grade 1 or grade 2 or grade 3, that like your mom had to come to school and you didn't know why, and then you're in a meeting and then you're doing tapping, and then there's all those things that they somewhat shelter you from, but what's going on. It's because you're not smart, or it's because you're this and stuff. So yeah, it definitely affected me. And again, I was just lucky that I had confidence in other areas.
And so now that you've like lived through that and come out and had so much success, what would your advice be for young people who maybe are in that resource room right now and having those feelings, and it is affecting their mental health? What would you suggest for them?
Just find something you love. That's what it comes down to. Whether that still can be education. That can be something that you need 2 or 3 or 4 years a year of university. It doesn't have to be a trade like mine. I think when it comes to people with dyslexia, if you find something that you love with humans, but especially when you're limited a little bit like that, or just if you find something, whether it be being a chef or being I don't know what the other example is, but find something that you care about, because that's what's going to drive you, and when you care about it and it's something that you want, then you can sit down and you can look, okay, what is this going to take and how can I do this? Just be goal oriented. For me, that's what it's all about. Goals. I don't function well without a goal. Right now, my goal is to be a triathlete. And so I put in 20 hours a week, every week, just to become that, because that's what I've chosen to do. And so I think it's easy to quit things when you have dyslexia or when you have learning disabilities and stuff like that, because everything seems to come very difficult. And so it's very easy to say, oh, screw this, I'm not going to do this, or screw this. And that's probably one of the worst habits you can have in life, period. I think you got to follow things through. And if you find something that you care about, just take it all the way to the end, and go with it, because it's about little victories. It's about small victories. I know this is, again, off topic, but I remember the day that I finally learned how to spell enough. I know that's so ridiculous, but it's not even that long of a word, but it was a word that just would never, ever stay in my head. And so when I learned how to spell enough, that was like, honestly, that kept me buzzing for weeks. and it's small victories stacked on top of each other. And that's the same as in the kitchen. That's the same as all things in life. And it doesn't have to do with spelling or reading. It's about gaining that confidence. So if you want to, be a hairdresser, going to school, doing well in that school, going home or spending 5 more hours on the books than you need to, that's going to make you go to bed tired and knowing, what, this has nothing, my dyslexia has nothing to do with this. I'm learning a trade or something that I really want to do. And you feel that makes you feel smart. It makes you feel like you can do anything. So I don't think even being dyslexic, you have to limit your goals. I mean, to a point. I don't think you can be a medical doctor necessarily all of it that easily. I'm sure there are some out there, but there's some things that you're gonna have limits to, but that doesn't mean you can't be successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And your obviously your passion and love is like food and like business, I guess, and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and people. I love people, and I think having staff and being around people and trying to kind of inspire people and all that kind of stuff. I think, you go through different stages of life, and that's one of the most important things to me now, and mentoring younger kids as well.
Yeah. So what would you say is like your favorite thing to make or cook for your favorite people?
That's changed so much over the years. I probably have a different answer next year as well. If I was in the kitchen in a restaurant setting, I absolutely love cooking fish, and I love being on the hot sections and in pans and that kind of stuff, because there's a lot of pressure, but you need to have a lot of finesse to do it. Cooking ribs, corn. I'm having quite a few people out at my cabin on Sunday just to cook up a whole bunch of ribs and some corn and some charred broccoli, and so basically just kind of barbecue and casual stuff. Yeah, just making people happy with food.
Nice, that's really cool. And your humor. So where can our viewers today like find you on social media, or where else can they follow you?
Yeah, on Instagram. I'm not so much on Facebook, but I'm Chef Dale MacKay on Instagram. It's mostly dog pictures and stories and stuff more than food. I don't post a ton of. I mean, I post some stuff about food, but it's mostly more my life more than anything else. All of our restaurants have a very strong Instagram following as well, in the sense that we do a lot of pictures, a lot of imagery, and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm basically live half in Regina and half in Saskatoon, and bring my dog everywhere and my son sometimes.
And yeah, thank you for your time today. I've really enjoyed speaking with you and learning more about you. I'm definitely excited to work with you some more in the future as well.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.